Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I hope you are well. I'm okay. It's gone a bit cold though, well it's gone quite a bit colder, so I'm not tempted to be doing outside things, never mind, get on with things indoors. And what could be more perfect in this weather than soup? Yay! Oh my goodness, I love soup. Soup is a great way to eat. You can chuck so many veggies into a soup, get more than one of your 5 a day in a bowl of soup. It's really easy to digest. So if you've got quite a busy life, say you're in a work situation, it was great when I was nursing because sometimes I'd get literally 15 minutes for lunch, eat a bowl of soup, and it's not sort of too heavy on the digestion, so then I'm running about the ward again later on. It's fine. So yeah, I love soup, perfect time of year for it. Now today it's a slightly different take on a video. I did a similar one this time last year, which I'll put the card on the end of this video for. This isn't so much a cooking video because I have made this recipe as a recipe video before. I can add that card to the end too. This is more of a shop bought soup versus homemade. So yes, obviously in terms of taste, but this is mainly going to be about the numbers, about the cost. Because I know there are still people out there who just don't understand how I manage on so little. So I really hope by the end of today, or the end of this video, that will be clearer. I've already done the maths and boy oh boy, I've got some shocking, amazing figures to share with you right at the end. So yes, I'm going to be looking at how much does it cost for the shop variety, how much does it cost me to make. And for once, this is what I was mentioning in my shopping video, I'm doing this, we're all set up and ready, I'm going to do this entire recipe with shop bought ingredients. So for anyone out there who doesn't have a garden, has absolutely nowhere that they can grow anything, if you're in a flat like me, you've got no balcony, you've not really even got window space, this is for you, and it will show you how it can be done without a garden. So, okay, it's going to get quite wordy and numbery later. I've written things down there so I can show you, because I think that sort of visual showing will help. But before we do any of that, let's get on with the recipe. Today I'm going to make a very simple tomato soup. Is there anything more gorgeous than a bowl of tomato soup when you come in from the cold outside, whether it's the garden or errands or something like that? And as always, when I make my soup today, I'll be making enough for at least 4 portions, so I can have 1 today, 1 tomorrow or the next day, and 2 for the freezer. Because even better than coming into a bowl of soup when you've been out in the cold is coming into a bowl of soup that's already been made, so you don't even have to do the cooking. So without further ado, let's have a little look at the ingredients and then we'll get into some maths. But don't be scared, I've done all the maths for you, for any of you who are math phobic. It really couldn't be simpler in terms of ingredients. So as the base for nearly pretty much all my soups, we've got our usual suspects of celery, carrots and an onion. I never weigh anything, just do it by sight. So I've got 3 stalks of celery here, 4 carrots, but they were fairly small ones, so you could just say 2 medium-sized carrots, 1 onion. I've got my stock here. Now, just a word on this stock. This is a really small pot. It's much more economical. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer, isn't it? It's much more economical to buy the bigger pot. When did I buy this? It was the beginning of December, I'm not sure, a few weeks ago. But when I went into the shop, they only had a couple of the really big pots left on the shelf, and they were both best before the end of January 2024, as in right now. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to get through that amount, so I opted for a little one. This has got a use by date of December this year. It'll be long gone before then. But yeah, It's just a little thing to bear in mind that, excuse me, buying larger pots of things, larger bags of things, it's almost always more economical to do it that way. But if you do, just do check that use by date. I mean, a couple of weeks either side, you maybe get away with it. But if it's got a use by date the following month and you think there's no way I'm going to get through that amount, don't get it. So yes, that'll be my stock. The 2 tins of tomatoes. Now, I've got plum tomatoes today. I was going to buy chopped tomatoes. I put my hand out for chopped tomatoes. It's just, they're easier, aren't they? They're ready chopped. Just chuck them in the pan. They didn't have any in stock, so I've got plum tomatoes instead. And all I'll do is I will chop these up a bit before they go in, and some mixed, oh no, it's oregano. I haven't got any mixed herbs at the moment, so I'll just use a bit of oregano. I did look on the shop bought ones, all these sort of cream of tomato recipes, and they all have a bit of skim milk powder in to give that creaminess. I'm not going to bother, I'm just doing it with these bits and pieces. So all my veggies, these veggies will get chopped, and I've just sauté them in either a bit of, oh, I should have had that ready as well, in some oil, or you could fry them off in a bit of butter if you've got some butter. Just get those, sort of sauté them for about 10 minutes or so. It softens them, and it helps bring out that lovely sweetness in the veggies. And then very simply I will chuck in the chopped up tomatoes and a litre of stock, and I'll let it bubble on the stove for about 20 minutes or so. Then I will blitz it, and then I will eat it. Easy. Right, I'm going to get this on the go and then come back to you shortly and we can talk some numbers. Yum, yum, yum. That colour, oh, it's gorgeous. Now, I've blitzed it. You can tell I've blitzed it. I've blitzed it quite hard, but there are still little bits in there. And I suppose if you were wanting to be really true to a sort of a cream of tomato, you could at this stage now pass it through a sieve. Not too fine a sieve, but pass it through a sieve and you'll get an even smoother, sort of creamier soup. I'm not going to do that because all those little bits, they're all nutritious. I don't want to chuck any of that out. I want every ounce of nutrition I can get. The other thing to say is, because someone will remind me otherwise, about not adding salt or pepper. I don't add salt to my food. There's enough salt in the vegetables. It's a purely personal taste thing. If you like salt and pepper in your food, add it, when you start your cooking. And at this stage, honestly, it's such a plain and simple soup. Yum, yum, yum. I rarely have tomato soup on its own these days. At this stage, I would now be adding beans to it, a load of beans. Yum, yum, yum. It makes it a really hearty meal. Obviously, I'm going to get my protein that way. But you can add all sorts. You could add, some leftover cooked pasta, leftover cooked rice. During the cooking, you could add paprika, chili flakes, any of those sort of stronger flavours you like. I mean, I always think with something like a tomato soup, make it really simple first, like this. Try it. You might like it really, really simple. I do. I love it. I'm going to muller some of this now. But if you think, oh, it needs a little something, you might think, oh, load of garlic next time. I didn't add garlic. I don't have any at the moment. Or, like I say, the chili, the paprika, that sort of thing. But essentially, this is a really lovely, dead basic, dead simple tomato soup recipe. Use it as it is, or use it as a base for other things. Right, I'm going to get myself a bowl full now. I can't just look at it anymore, I need to eat. The colour, that colour. Do you know what, I think there's there is psychology in colour, isn't there? But on a really bitterly cold, damp day, that colour alone is going to make you sort of feel a little bit warmer, isn't it? Right, let's have a chow down, and I want to talk some numbers now, and I want to astonish you with some numbers. The best bit. Excuse the washing up behind me. I'm not doing the washing up until I've eaten. Oh God, it's tomato soup. I mean, it's so simple, isn't it? But so comfort in a bowl. Oh, it's lovely. It's so good. It's so tomatoey. I know it might sound stupid because it's tomato soup, but yeah, that tomato flavour is just, it's making my mouth ping and pop. Oh, that's gorgeous. Right, I'm not going to eat the rest on camera because we've got other stuff to talk about. I've given myself a bowl full there. How to approach this. So the thing is, I did buy some supermarket or some ready-made. I bought some tinned soups. I was going to do a taste comparison today as well, but it seems ridiculous to open up all these tins of soup and scoff them all in one go. No, thank you. So as and when I've eaten them, they may go in the cupboard and just stay there for a while for an emergency. But I will let you know in terms of taste. But this today, I think this is more about the cost and how we can live, you know, frugally, simply, how we can really, you know, save ourselves a load of dosh. So I did go out and buy a Heinz. So that's just about the most expensive soup in the UK. So for anyone overseas, just to say, I think particularly my North American friends, I think your soups come condensed, don't they? So you always add, you do the tin of soup and a tin of water. That's not the case here. This is ready to eat, as it were. You don't add water, don't add anything, just heat it up, heat and eat. So I bought a tin of, and I'm mentioning that because of portion sizes, which we'll come to. So a tin of Heinz, which is kind of like our, yeah, it's sort of the litmus paper, isn't it? It's the bog standard. Or not the bog standard, it's the kind of the market leader, I guess. Then I bought a tin of a supermarket's own version. This is Sainsbury's. I looked in Tesco, they didn't have any. Now, the other thing to say where I live is my Sainsbury's and my Tesco's are what they call the metros or locals. They're quite small versions, so the range is a bit more limited. But I did find one supermarket own label. I also checked in Lidl, because that would be the cheapest of cheap. They only do one type of soup. They do a vegetable soup. I mention this because last year when I wanted to do the lentil soup, I know that my friends Richard and Paul get a lentil soup from Lidl. Mine never have it. I'll come to the price of Lidl in a second. And I also looked up in Sainsbury's, I checked out, and in Tesco's, I looked at the chiller cabinets of the big pots of sort of like fresh soup. You know, it's in the chiller cabinet. And I was about to buy one, and then I suddenly thought, oh no, don't, because I don't have a chiller cabinet at home. So I didn't get those, can't do the taste test. I can say that in the past, when I was really poorly once, I did end up, what was it? It's when I had COVID and I was isolating, and I ended up doing one of those supermarket shops that comes to your door. And I did use some fresh soups. It was like a tomato and bean soup. And it was really nice. It was really, you know, it was perfectly lovely. Never mind taste. Let's look at cost. And the first thing I'm going to bear in mind with cost is portion size. So, it says on here, where did I see it? I can't see it. It's definitely, oh yeah, no, where is it? I can't find it right away, but it says that serves 2 people. So that's 200 mils or 200 grams each. Oh yeah, servings per can, 2. So, bog standard soup bowl. I didn't open it, but I measured out 200, I beg your pardon, I measured out 200 mils of water and put it in the bowl to see, because I thought, I don't think that's going to serve 2 people. It's certainly not as a meal, maybe as a starter, but anyway, so I put it in my bowl. It didn't even come halfway up my bowl. It didn't even half fill this bowl. So I've decided, for the purposes of my eating, my figures, what have you, my numbers, that I'm going to say that a tin is a meal. I certainly couldn't get by on half a tin. I'd be starving after that. I mean, I know, like, again, once again, my North American friends, I know that for you, tomato soup, you have to have a toasted cheese sandwich. I was going to say cheese toasty. A toasted cheese sandwich, that's like, they have to be together. We don't do that in the UK. I would have a slice of bread and that. So, 400 grams, and I've measured mine. So let's just quickly go through prices. This was that you saw in my shopping video. Couldn't you see? So total was $6.41. There are a couple of other things on there. Now the Heinz cost, what's that? £1.85. Couldn't believe it. I shouldn't have bought them, never mind taste testing. I should have just walked away, but never mind, I bought them. So it's £1.85 for the Heinz, and then the Sainsbury's supermarket own label, 90p. Wow, we've come down half already just by buying the own label. Lidl's tins of soups, I don't know if they're 400 or they're 350 or whatever, but they're about 50p a tin. So that's coming down even more. Can we bring that price down? Oh, and the fresh pots are 600. So I worked out what it would cost for 400, so 1 tin. So all this costings at the end of the day is going to be for 1 tin of soup, 1 portion. So the fresh works out at £1.33 per portion. So we've got Heinz 185. We've got fresh 133. We've got supermarket own label 90p. What did it cost me to make my own? So this is what it cost. The stock 15 pence. The onion 12 pence. Is actually 11.5p, but I've rounded it up to 12p. The carrots, that quantity, 30 pence. The celery, 18 pence, and the 2 tins of Tom's, 74 pence. Now those tins of tomatoes were the cheapest. They were, what were they each? I can't remember now. They were 37 pence for each of those tins. That's really, really cheap for a tin of tomatoes. The next one, they've got some sort of 55p, and if you bought a tin of organic tomatoes, I don't know how much that's going to cost. Over £1, I would imagine. But for the sake of this recipe, what we've made today at a budget supermarket, Lidl, it was 74p for the tomatoes. So in total, it cost £1.49 for, it's actually a little bit over 2 litres. So, in other words, that, I'm just going to fold up this little bit, that works out at 30 pence. So there's all the costings. That works out at 30p for a tin of homemade tomato soup. And like I said, Lidl don't stock it, but that would be your next cheapest option if you're buying it ready-made, and that's going to be around 50p. Oh, and just to say, in terms of cooking time, it was about, I had the hob itself was on for about 20 minutes, possibly a little less, and then the heat was turned off, and I just left it, because it's cast iron, with its lid on for another 10 minutes. So I've used, let's say I used 20 minutes worth of fuel, a third of an hour. I actually did the maths for this. It's about 15 pence an hour for my hob, although it's the smallest ring, so it might be a bit less. In other words, maybe about 5 pence worth of fuel. And even adding the cost of the fuel in, making it myself at home with all shop-bought ingredients is cheaper than the cheapest budget supermarket. It works. Now, I then thought, this comes back to folk sometimes saying to me, I just don't believe you, Vivi. It's not possible to live like you live on so little. And yes, it is, because I do. So I've done a little bit more maths. So that's where we got to. Oh, hold on a sec. So there's my working. So we can see we've got our Heinz, we've got our Fresh, we've got our supermarket own, and then there's my homemade soup, but with all shop ingredients. If we go down a bit, now, I was saying this is perfect for anyone who doesn't have any kind of gardening space. You cannot grow any of your own vegetables at all. How cheap can we do it if we have to buy everything? But now let's suppose you have got a little bit of growing space. So when I move, I hope I'll get something of a garden, even if it's a tiny little yard. Okay, in America, yard means a whole back garden, doesn't it? But in the UK, a yard is literally just a little paved area outside your back door, possibly with where your outhouse would have been, you know, your outside lavvy. Just think of like a courtyard. So even if I've got a really tiny space like that, maybe I'll have room for a few tomato plants, especially if I grow cordon varieties rather than bush varieties. They can go up and up and up, don't take up too much space. So let's have a think about costs. If I'd grown my own tomatoes, how much would it make a tin of soup if I added in my own tomatoes? And look, suddenly we're down to 15 pence a tin just by having my own tomatoes. Not stopping there. In the past, when where's my water? When I've grown all my own tomatoes and my own carrots and my own onions and my own celery, how much is it then going to cost me to make this soup? Get ready. 3 pence. It's the cost of the stock. So if I made this with all my allotment veg, it would cost me 3 pence. It's crazy, isn't it? And like I was saying, with those additions to make it a more hearty meal, to bulk it out, I'd add beans from the garden too. And again, if I've got a small garden when I move, I would think about climbing beans, because again, very little space taken up, they can just go up. Maybe I can sneak in a really tiny bed somewhere of coco de pampol, just because I love them so much. But yeah, if with all my own homegrown veg, it would cost 3 pence, and that's for the stock. I could of course make my own stock, and I do from time to time with. There's not much scrap from veg as I'm cooking, so I don't peel my veg if they're organic. You know, sometimes a bit of topping and tailing, but things like if it's the spring and I'm thinning plants out, if I'm thinning out carrots or thinning out fennel, I'll keep the thinnings and I'll use those to make stock. But generally speaking, I don't make my own stock, because that would be a case of me having all my carrots, onions, celery, all those things, boiling them and boiling them and boiling them, and then taking the veg out and using the liquid or blending the whole anyway. So yeah, 3 pence with shop stock. Now here comes the really mind-blowing maths. Let's using the example of our cheapest supermarket own label soup at 90 pence a tin. If I was to have that every day for lunch, I mean I wouldn't, but let's just for the purpose of the maths and the illustration, if I had that every single day for my lunch, it would cost me for the week £6.30 for my lunches. If I had my allotment grown tomato soup every day for lunch, at the end of the week for 7 days, it would cost me 21 pence. A whole week of lunches for 21 pence. And that, my friends, is how I have been able to live on next to no money for these last 7 years or so. So yeah, it's, yeah, just to show you that again, so it's really, really clear. I can go all zhuzhy and fancy at £1.85, or I can grow my own veg and do it for 3p. But look, what we've seen today, and I think that's really encouraging, because I've not really costed recipes out before when I've had to buy all the ingredients. So this is a first for me. And you know, going forward, when I've moved and I've got my garden and I'll be doing less allotment gardening, you know, goodness knows I'm struggling to do it these days. This will be my life now, where I'm buying more and more of my veggies and growing less and less. I'm sure I'm still going to grow something somewhere, but yeah, that's really encouraging to me to think if it's the 30 pence, if it's all the shop bought ingredients, that's still a week of lunches for £2.10. I mean, it's bonkers, isn't it? And you know, I don't know. I think what I might do is, I think I should do this throughout this year. I might not do it on camera necessarily, but do it for myself anyway, is think about evening meals. So all the things that I've always done over the years, you know, my curries, my fasolade and my chili and all the things I eat. How much would it cost me to be making those meals if I had to buy all of the ingredients, including the veggies? I don't know, because I haven't had to do it for so long. But yes, I will think about that, and I think it might be worth sharing. If it's worth sharing, I will share with you as the year goes by. But for today, that's showing. Make it yourself. Do your own cooking if you can. I know for some people, and we always have to remember that some folk are just not physically able. You know, that they may just be, you know, after work they are too exhausted. For some people, just managing to get to work and do a day's work is enough for them. For some people, getting out of bed in the morning and getting dressed is as much as they can manage. For those of us who can manage to cook ourselves, let's do it ourselves. Reduce our costs, reducing, I was going to say packaging, although I've used 2 tins today, but you know, in some instances there's a reduction in packaging too. You've got more control over what's going into your food. You know exactly what you know exactly what's in it when you've cooked it yourself. Have a cooking session day. Have a day where you make maybe 2 different soups, so you can alternate from day to day, a couple of different evening meal type things. Get a load into your freezer, have some in your fridge for that week, and then you can get onto a roll with it, where the following week you might make 2 different soups and 2 different main meals and combine them with what you've got in the freezer, and then you've suddenly got 4 different main meals to pick from, exactly as I was saying in that shopping video. Then suddenly you've got 4 different main meals to choose from and 4 different soups every day for lunch to choose from. If you like soups in the summer, I kind of get into the whole salad thing again. But yeah, you can massively reduce your outgoings by not buying any processed food. Don't buy processed food ever again. Cook everything yourself. I'm willing to bet that a lot of people could probably halve their shopping bill just by putting every item of processed food back on the shelf and gathering up fresh ingredients to take home and cook yourself. Have a go, see what happens. What we do know is we can make some lovely tomato soup for just 30p a portion with all shop bought ingredients. Yay, right. I keep catching that out of the corner of my eye and salivating. I want to tuck in. You know, of course, as well, like I was saying about all the things you could add to it, you could also, by the way, during the cooking phase, you could add a potato, and then at the blitzing stage, that will thicken it if you want a really thick soup. I think it's probably better to add something like beans or rice though, after you've blitzed the soup, add the beans and rice afterwards, so you've got some texture. Of course, with beans and rice, you're adding protein, whereas the potato isn't going to really give you much by way of protein. But also, of course, maybe you've got a little bit of leftover cream. Maybe you do bakey things, and sometimes have a bit of cream. Dollop a bit of cream in there, or even something like if you've got a bit of leftover mascarpone cheese, or any cream cheese stirred in, or you could just grate some cheese on the top. If you do that, you're suddenly going to whack the cost up. So if you're on a really, really, really tight budget, stick to the soup as it is with maybe a handful of beans. All right, lovelies, I'm waffling now and I want to go and eat. So I will see you all again really soon, I hope. But until then, happy cooking. Get yourself experimenting. If you're accustomed to buying stuff ready-made, and also go online. There are so many recipes. Finding recipes, it couldn't be easier these days with the internet. So have a little look online. And with the card things at the end of my video, I'll show you my tomato soup recipe. I think there's one with beans in. And last year's little comparison in terms of costing. I think it was lentil soup last year. Until the next one's lovely. Happy eating. Cheerio.